I know you're gonna dig this.
First of all, shout out to my guy DJ Melly Lil for this funky beat. But this is Anthony Mitchell, host of the End Zone Club podcast, where we have conversations wrapped around things we know now we wish we knew when we were younger. And today I have a special, inspiring, motivational guest in the building. But before we hear from him, I gotta get a word from my sponsor. So please like, share, rate, subscribe to this podcast. Hit the links in the description box and do what you do. Y'all ready to go live? Because I'm ready to go live. Let's go in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everyone. This is Andre Truitt, representative for Just Gifted Clothing Brand. If you have individual talent of any kind, we are talking to you. Join this clothing brand that has built a community of people that encourages others to use their gifts and talents. Man, we are the fastest growing brand that you haven't heard of yet. To find out what we're really about, just go to justgiftedclothingbrand.com. Let me spell that out for you. JUSGIFTED clothingbrand.com. One more time for you. JUSGIFTED clothingbrand.com. Talent in any way, you're just gifted.
You know what? I know I told you guys that I have a guest in the building. Actually, I do. But today is going to be a 2-part conversation. So please listen to today's episode and then expect to get the bonus episode coming in the next few days. Therefore, I can do a proper introduction for today's guest. Shout out to Dre and the guys over at Just Gifted Clothing Brand. Thank you guys for all you do. I want to give you guys, as always, a round of applause for rocking with us here at the End Zone Club podcast. But hey, just real quickly, I'm not going to be with you guys very long, so I want to drop a little content. And today I want to talk about when growth changes everything. So the other day, and this is kind of what prompted this story, just a personal experience I had last week. But my 12-year-old, well, he's 13 now as of a few days ago, but my son Portland was sitting behind me in the truck. We were getting ready to go somewhere. The whole family's in the vehicle. I think we were getting ready to head to church. And as I'm starting to back out of the driveway, he says, "Daddy, I need you to readjust your seat." Now, I don't know if you guys remember the old school ways of thinking. I know things have already are starting to change now, but in the old school thinking, the driver is the one that has to be the most comfortable because, of course, all of our hands are in their lives. So I'm sitting here thinking as he's saying this, "Daddy, I need you to readjust your seat." And I'm trying to cycle what's going on at first. But then he says, "I don't have enough room." And it hit me. He wasn't complaining, but he had simply grown too big to sit directly behind me in the seat. So the seat that he used to always sit behind as he's growing used to one time be comfortable, but now it no longer fit him. And in like fashion, as I really got to thinking and processing about what was going on, I found a way kind of to relate it to a lot of us, because growth has a way of demanding adjustments. Within these adjustments, I realized that if people don't recognize your growth, they'll make your request for comfort as entitlement. When in reality, you're just no longer built for the space you used to occupy. I know a lot of times in a lot of relationships, situationships, moments we are in, a lot of times people build a narrative based upon who you are at the moment. So if you're a clown, if you're a comedic individual, if you're serious, if you're quiet, if you're a people pleaser or whatever you are, a lot of times people box you in there. And as you begin to grow into new spaces, sometimes people will have an issue accepting the new you. So always remember, if you're going through a season of growth, do know this, that as you're growing, growth has new requirements. And what I want to talk about, sometimes you having a bigger vision requires bigger thinking. Right now, I'm sitting in downtown Nashville, and Nashville has been a great place for me at various periods of my career. It's funny, when I was in college and I was getting ready to really jump into the workforce, I didn't know what it had in store for me. But years later, I would come back in the workforce and spend a night in the same hotel, which is the Grand Opryland Hotel that I had stayed in as a college student, as a dreamer. Now I'm back here with the reality that I can see the vision of my dreaming having grown into a career. Now here I am in the military portion of my career, and I'm back in the same city. So I can see a full transition of growth that has occurred in my life. Now, when I came through college, I partied a little bit when I was here, but now every night as an adult that's responsible with children, I've been in my room every night after all the work festivities has ended and after we've eaten and have watched Netflix, text my kids, make sure everybody's okay, and then gone to sleep. For me, that's been a level of growth. Some people that maybe knew me at early areas in life might think I'm being antisocial, but one thing about my growth, especially in this period of time, I am not trying to have my good name, especially in this crowd, evil spoken of. You know, you never want to be invited into a room with higher ranking individuals, and because you haven't grown outside of the party boy or the charismatic kid or just the person that enjoyed having a good time, growth requires a bigger vision. It requires bigger thinking. Because as you're growing, there's a greater responsibility, which now requires different habits. I can't move like I used to. I can't think like I used to. I can't interact the ways that I used to. Because I'm realizing, and this goes for all of you guys that are listening, that as you're growing, your influence is also requiring stronger character. I got to be a man of my word. If I tell you I'm going to be a certain place at a certain time, I got to own it. I got to eat it. I got to put that lead in that pencil and write my plan with it. And I encourage you guys to do that. Do know that as you're growing, you got to have a bigger vision. That's one of the very first steps of growth. You got to see bigger. You got to see yourself as more. This has been a challenge for me because as I travel a lot, I see reoccurring themes in every community. I see the movers and the shakers. I see the big thinkers. And then I also see those that time has left behind. I'm realizing that one of the biggest things that separates people who make things happen versus people who talk about things happening is the level of accountability over their own personal actions that some may be willing to take. So I want to say this: you can't grow into a new season while living in yesterday's measurements. I promise you, I don't want anybody to measure me by what I used to be, by a past mistake that I've made, by maybe a series of bad choices that I made. Don't measure me by that. Measure me by how I'm spending my time now, which time is one of the greatest resources you'll ever have. Recently, I got a phone call from a young individual, and he's wanting training with basketball. And you guys know that we do a lot in the community. We offer a lot of different offerings for kids, free opportunities for them to, to grow, to work, to put in some work. And hopefully by doing so, their game will grow. Well, what he didn't realize is he was calling. I was actually feeding him a bunch of excuses. And what I mean by that, he wants basketball training, but right now, if you listen to one of the prior episodes, just a few episodes ago, we just did a basketball camp. He saw the flyer. However, the camp had already transpired on June the 13th of 2026, in the year of our Lord. And he sees the flyer and he instantly calls, even though he's missed the opportunity. Now that he's got me on the phone as the director, CEO, or however you want to put it, of my nonprofit, he wants to know, who do you have that could train? So I give him a number. He calls. They talk, and then he calls me back. Hey, do you have any other options? He's vetting, as I'm vetting him, he's vetting these people. So I say, hey man, listen, our gym, the air conditioning unit is out. And he's like, well, I don't care about the unit being out as long as I get an opportunity to train. Now, I'm going to be honest, I fed him more excuses just to see how he handled what I was throwing his way. And he spoke with a level of maturity. And I'm like, you know what? That's the kind of kid that'll grow. So I did have other coaches that I was able to reach out and to link him up with to see what could happen. But I love to hear someone that says they want something not make excuses for why they can't have it. Don't you realize that's a big part of the conversation, is that when you start seeing bigger, a lot of times you won't allow excuses to keep you contained to your environment. I have a lot of families that come from inner city places. I've been all throughout the projects, in the hood, whatever you want to call it. I'm not afraid of my people. I'll still go in my communities, and I am not afraid of my people. However, there are a lot of people from my environment that don't take accountability for taking control of their situations, whether that's taking pride in their community and doing what they can to keep it clean, or holding each other accountable for things that happen. This is not just germane to my community, so don't think I'm downing my community or my people, because I'm not going to do that. But what I'm saying, whatever section of life you're from, you got to start thinking bigger. Just because your neighborhood has always looked like this, or just because people in your family have always talked a certain way, or just because some people have always had a mindset for not being able to get ahead, or for things holding them back, you got to break apart from that thinking. You have to break apart from that thinking and put yourselves in uncomfortable rooms. Just a few minutes ago, I was at the state capitol, got a chance to see how legislation passes through. We're traveling different floors of the state legislation and or the state capitol, and it was very eye-opening. I would have never had this opportunity as an individual or as a leader in my family unless that same party kid in college that's now coming back in his career had done some growth in the 20 years since the first time I stepped foot in the city of Nashville. As you're growing, though, this is not about me. This is not a me conversation or pat me on the back. I'm just using a few of my own personal stories for your own entertainment, so to speak. But as you're growing, do realize everything around you has to readjust. Some of your friendships are going to readjust. Some of your family dynamics are going to be readjusted. I promise you, as I'm working harder and whatever, I got a text message today. Hey, are you in Dubai? That's one of my cousins. I don't know what prompted that question, but people are talking. No, I'm not in Dubai, baby. I'm in downtown Nashville. And then because there are a lot of dynamics that come with me being in military. There are discounts that I have. There is, money I make, or there's opportunities for double dipping. There's opportunities to see the world. Now, as I'm traveling, people are, hey, can I have your discount? Hey, can I apply this here? Can you check and see if there's something you can get free tickets here? There's so much that people are looking from me because now I've gone from being the product to the asset, or the consumer to the producer. So your family dynamics change when people begin to see you as a sponsorship, when they begin to see you as the meal ticket. You then know that there's been growth in your life. Your career is going to change. At my level now, I have to wake up earlier than I've ever awakened in my life. I have to be professional now more than I have to cut jokes. I mean, there's so much about my dynamic that has changed, and everyone that has been great at anything can tell you the same. And with that being said, I was listening to Miles Davis. Miles was probably one of the most gifted musicians we have ever seen. And Miles was asked a question by a reporter, what made him so great? And he really didn't talk about what made him great, but what he talked about was why many of his contemporaries weren't growing. And he said, first of all of the great ones are selfish. And I thought about that for a minute. All of the great ones are selfish. And I pondered what he was saying for several days. And then I thought about what he was saying in light of a quote Muhammad Ali had made earlier in life. And that was that champions aren't built on the night of competition. Great musicians, in same fashion to what Miles is saying, Great musicians aren't built the night of playing or in the big moment, but from the work they're putting in the gym, in those quiet moments when everybody else is having a good time. What are you doing to advance your situation? So what Miles Davis, what his contemporaries were doing, whatever he was playing, they were mirroring and replicating his sound. But they are not going into any new areas of sound or seeing anything new genres or reestablishing new ideas and concepts, because with their growth, they weren't growing. They were just mirroring and copying. I want you to think about that. Sometimes your greatest adjustment isn't because everyone else is wrong or because what you're doing isn't working. Your sometimes greatest adjustment is knowing that you always have room for growth. So how do you manage those expectations of who you are and what you are to become? Have you ever looked at yourself and compared your light or dim your light because maybe somebody around you may not accept who you really are or how you really think or how you really stand out? I can be honest. I have dimmed my light and readjusted my focus just to fit in the expectations of other people in the past. Because I understand that sometimes shift is uncomfortable, right? Growth can be uncomfortable. Because growth is uncomfortable, I have started seeing that there are people who resist not only growth, but they'll directly resist your growth. You may not realize this, but there are many people who benefit from the version of you that stayed small. Sometimes the smaller you doesn't challenge people. Sometimes the smaller you doesn't make people uncomfortable to see themselves as not progressing. You know, we used to have this saying, these two right here are two peas in a pot. Two peas in a pot is usually, Heckle and Jekyll. They're usually, I'm not saying it's a backhanded compliment, but it's not signifying that there's anything great going on for two peas in a pod. They're just alike. But what happens when one of those peas begins to break out of that hole and wants to grow and become a plant that's producing its own fruit, while the other pea wants to stay a seed, wants to stay small? I tell you guys, familiarity is comfortable. I mean, your growth will sometimes force others to evaluate themselves. Some people will only know how to relate to the old you. I can't state this enough. Change makes some people uncomfortable. Why is that? Because some people don't miss you. They miss the version of you they could control. Oh my gosh. So there are challenges that come with you outgrowing your environment. There have been times I felt guilty for changing. Sometimes between running my own home, working within the confines of my business, working in ministry, or even just leisure time and these things that come around that. Sometimes I don't have time to maybe return home to see my mom like I should. So when I do get a chance to see my mother, I'm not out and about politicking and communicating with friends that maybe I grew up with. And it's not saying that I'm greater than they are, but because my time is of essence, I have to prioritize and be intentional about how I direct myself wherever I go. I don't just hang on the phone for 2 hours making small talk. If I'm on the phone for any given period of time, it's because I'm trying to conduct some level of business. That's just how I am. And sometimes I've had friends that maybe grew up with me, or maybe we were close once upon a time. They call me now and then. It doesn't take long. As we're talking, I realize we really don't have anything in common. Is that saying that I'm super special? No, it's not. But because of the way I've had to invest in my life, I'm growing in a different direction. I still love you. If I get an opportunity to catch a Knicks game with you, I would love to do that. but the reality that we really fit into, you fit into my plans for growth and I fit into your plans for growth, it doesn't happen. I never forget, I was listening to Emmitt Smith while he was still playing, or maybe he had retired already, but there were some business ideas that he needed maybe a little bit of mentorship on. And he called Michael Jordan and they talked about it. And Mike was like, hey, how does this work for you? And they decided to sit down and talk. And as they're talking, Mike is giving Emmitt Smith all kinds of great advice. And Emmitt said, hey, Mike, why don't you do this more often? And Mike says, because there's some people that never take time to make this phone call. They just automatically assume he's off limits. That's mind-blowing sometimes, that some of your greatest opportunities for growth may come from someone you never think can offer you that opportunity. But sometimes you have to readjust your thinking. Some people you see as a wall that might be closed off. Maybe it's their facial expression. Maybe it's the way they carry themselves. Maybe you just think they really don't like you. But sometimes you'll be surprised if you'll make that first step and make certain phone calls. There may be some growth opportunities at the hand of some successful people you never know is available. So I promise you, if you're a social media influencer, for example, do some cold calling, maybe send some emails out that's unexpected, but learn how to pitch yourself. Learn how to receive no's. Learn how to receive rejection. That's part of the territory. But I promise, the more people you reach out to, the closer you'll get to your yes and to your next level of exposure. So, hey, I know I've been talking for a little bit, but hopefully this is helping somebody. But I do want to say this. Sometimes your readjusting isn't rejection. Sometimes people think you've become different, but in reality, you've become bigger than the space you're in. So just like my son, Portland, he wasn't rejecting the truck. He just simply needed more room. Sometimes God isn't removing people because they're bad. He's making room for what he's growing. Let me say this before I go, just on the tail end of this. I do have to say, because of the space I'm in, I do get a chance to intermingle with a lot of young men and women that are doing similar things on different platforms. And you'll be surprised, after me doing this for 20 plus years, none of these young people are reaching out to me for advice. Or if they are reaching out to me for advice, ultimately at some point they're going to ask me for some money. But nobody's ever asking me for advice and what my keys are to longevity. They're not asking for how I remain consistent in this path enough to grow that even after I had some of the worst letdowns in my life, that next season, God was able to bring more growth. Or sometimes I've been in circles where there are guys literally that just started working in the community yesterday. And sometimes they're the most arrogant individuals I've ever worked with. And it's hard to get anything across to them because they already feel like they know everything. I'm never in a circle where I try to be the smartest person or the most knowledgeable person. I'm humble enough to realize that we can learn a lot from anyone. So with that said, I'm leading with that thought, but I want to tell you, stay humble. Be patient with people as they're adjusting to your growth. But don't apologize for your healthy growth. While you're growing, continue learning. While you're learning, be sure to create environments that match who you're becoming. So if you're trying to start investing in business, cut out the clown time and start trying to be around people who are more punctual with their time, that know how to win the room, that know how to build friendships and win favor. Those are the kind of people you want. And last but not least, remember where you came from without living there. So just in closing, I want to say this, that when Portland asked me to move my seat, I could have ignored him. But if I love him, I make room for his growth. Maybe that's what God is taking us to today. Stop forcing yourself into spaces you've outgrown. Stop shrinking so everyone else stays comfortable. It's okay if your growth requires things to readjust, because the healthiest growth isn't measured by how much bigger you become. It's measured by how willing you are to let your life make room for who you become. So I must just say this: if this episode has spoke to you, share it with someone who's been feeling uncomfortable lately. Maybe they're not comfortable because they're failing. Maybe they're uncomfortable because they're growing. And it's their time for their world to readjust. Y'all, it's been real. This is all I got for you. I look forward to dropping our next episode in the next few days. This is Anthony Mitchell with the End Zone Club.